Hey everyone. Throwaway account because my main has family on it.
I, 35M, honestly thought the nightmare part of my marriage was behind us. About 18 months ago, my wife Claire, 33F, had an affair with a guy from her office. It was like someone set off a bomb right in the middle of our life: 2 kids, a dog, a mortgage, 10 years of history. Everything suddenly looked fragile. When I confronted her, she cried, swore she didn't want to lose me, begged for another chance. She promised she'd do the work, cut off contact with him, and get professional help. I was angry, humiliated, but also hooked by the idea that we could claw our way back. So I agreed to try, mostly for the kids but also because I wanted to believe the woman I married wasn't gone forever. That's when therapy became the centerpiece of her redemption arc.
Every Thursday evening she'd grab a leather notebook and head to a counselor across town. She'd come back looking serene, sometimes even energized, talking about boundaries and repair. She read books with titles like Rebuilding After Betrayal and left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror: "We're stronger than yesterday, thank you for giving us another chance." For a while, I let myself believe it. We even started date nights again.
Quiet coffee after her sessions, family movie Fridays, little moments that felt like normal married life. I'd catch her watching me with a soft expression and think, maybe we're going to make it. But even in those hopeful weeks, something about her new calm unsettled me. She guarded her phone more than she used to, blaming group therapy chats. She sometimes came home later than expected, offering vague excuses about running over time or staying to journal. Once, I reached for her bag to hand her keys and she snatched it back, smiling too fast, saying, "Just paperwork from the session." I brushed it off. I told myself healing is messy, that I should give her space. After all, she was the one putting in the effort, or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see how badly I wanted to believe the story she was feeding me, that she was working hard to be a better partner, that therapy was fixing everything. The truth, the one I was still months away from uncovering, was nothing like the picture she painted. And once I finally saw behind the curtain, I realized the affair wasn't the last betrayal, it was just the opening act. For a while I let Claire's new habits lull me into thinking we were really mending things. She'd come home from therapy with a relaxed smile, drop a kiss on my cheek, and ask about the kids' homework. I tried to match her energy, but a quiet unease kept tugging at me like a low note under a cheerful song. The first hint something was off came from our bank app. I wasn't snooping, I was paying a bill when I saw a string of charges that didn't line up with a counselor's office: boutique wine bars, rideshare trips to neighborhoods nowhere near the clinic, even a receipt for a hotel lounge, all stamped on Thursday nights. Then there were the phone calls. She started answering unknown numbers in the hallway, speaking in a soft voice she didn't use with anyone else. Once, when she thought I was out back, I overheard her say, "I can't stay long tonight, he's starting to notice." She hung up fast when she saw me. The tipping point came one rainy Thursday. She left for therapy in a sharp blazer instead of her usual cardigan, saying she was meeting the counselor's new assistant. Something about the way she avoided my eyes made my stomach twist. I waited until she texted that the session had run late, then checked the Find My app we'd set up when the kids were little. Her location wasn't the therapist's office, it was a boutique hotel downtown. I drove there, parked across the street, and sat with my hands glued to the steering wheel. Through the glass awning I saw her, laughing with someone I didn't recognize, tall, dark jacket, hand on the small of her back as they walked inside. Not a counselor. Not group therapy. I didn't storm in. I just sat there in the drizzle, staring at the reflection of my own face in the windshield, realizing I'd been cheering for a version of my marriage that didn't exist. Whatever she was doing on those healing nights, it wasn't about us. And the longer I sat there, the more I understood, the affair hadn't really ended, it had just found a more sophisticated disguise. After sitting on what I'd seen at the hotel for 2 sleepless nights, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I waited until a Sunday morning, when the kids were at my sister's, and told Claire we needed to talk. She breezed into the kitchen in leggings and an oversized sweater, all weekend casual, and poured herself coffee like we were any normal couple. I asked, as evenly as I could, where exactly she'd been during her therapy sessions. For a second she froze, just long enough for me to notice the way her knuckles tightened around the mug. Then she pasted on that practiced smile and launched into a story about group exercises running late, a colleague giving her a ride, lots of sharing. I let her finish, then slid my phone across the table, open to a screenshot of her location at the hotel.
The smile evaporated.
She blinked, swallowed, and tried to pivot. I can explain, it's not what it looks like. Apparently, the man was a coach who helps with relationship trauma, and they'd gone somewhere quiet to talk about how to rebuild intimacy. When I asked why she needed a hotel bar for intimacy coaching, she snapped that I was twisting things, that I always assume the worst. Her tone hardened fast.
She accused me of spying, of sabotaging her healing.
She even threw in a jab about how my paranoia was the reason she'd strayed in the first place.
The audacity almost made me laugh.
When I pressed, she changed tactics, soft tears, shaky voice, swearing that nothing physical had happened, that I was jeopardizing the progress we'd made. But the details kept shifting. First they'd only met twice, then it was a few times, then she admitted to sharing feelings that had gotten complicated. By the end of the conversation, it was clear she'd built an entire web of half-truths to keep me believing she was fixing our marriage while secretly feeding the same addiction to attention that wrecked us the first time. I told her I wanted the full story or she could leave right then. She stared at me, jaw tight, and said, "You're making a huge mistake." That was the moment I understood. She wasn't sorry she'd hurt me, she was sorry she'd been caught. After that confrontation, the house felt hollow, like all the air had been sucked out. Claire stomped upstairs, muttering about how I'd ruined everything, and I just stood there, staring at the mug she'd left on the counter, coffee cooling in a dark ring.
The next few days blurred together.
I still packed lunches, did the school run, answered work calls, but it felt like I was watching someone else perform my life. Inside, there was only static, anger, grief, confusion, all crowding for space. I'd catch myself thinking, maybe I pushed too hard, then remember the hotel awning, the way her face changed when I showed her the screenshot.
That memory would slam the door on any flicker of doubt. At night, I barely slept.
I'd lie awake, replaying her shifting stories, from just a coach to sharing feelings to you're imagining things. Each version felt like a new cut, proof that she wasn't just careless, she was deliberate. She'd look me in the eye and asked for forgiveness while building a secret life right beside me. Even the kids noticed something was off. Our oldest asked why mommy was mad all the time, and the younger one started crawling into my lap every evening, as if she could sense I was the one holding everything together. I hated that Claire's choices were bleeding into their world, that they were getting fragments of the storm she'd created.
Grief arrived in waves.
Sometimes I'd be okay, folding laundry or scrolling through emails, and then a memory, her laughing with that man, or the sticky notes she'd written about healing, would hit like a punch. I felt embarrassed, too, for buying her act so completely. But somewhere in the middle of the chaos, a thin thread of clarity appeared.
I realized I couldn't fix someone who didn't want to be honest.
No amount of second chances or late-night talks could rebuild trust if she wasn't willing to stand on solid ground with me. That thought scared me, because it meant the only way out of this fog might be without her. After a week of walking on eggshells, I sat Claire down at the kitchen table, the same place where we'd laughed over late-night pizza, planned vacations, and once promised each other we'd never give up. I told her I couldn't keep living in limbo, wondering which version of her I was coming home to. At first, she tried the usual tricks, teary apologies, talk about how far we've come, and vague promises to end it for real this time. But there was no depth behind her words, only a scramble to hold on to the comfort of our life while keeping her secrets. I laid it out as plainly as I could, full honesty, counseling together, cutting ties with the man from the hotel, or I was done. She went silent, then laughed bitterly, calling me controlling and too dramatic for my own good.
That laugh told me everything.
The next morning, while she was out, I packed a bag for myself and the kids and drove to my sister's.
I called a lawyer that afternoon.
When Claire realized I wasn't bluffing, her texts flipped from fury to pleading, but by then, the spell was broken. The first night away, I felt an ache I can't describe, a mix of grief and relief so strong it left me shaking. But beneath it all was something steady, the sense that I'd finally stepped off the roller coaster she kept strapping me into. If you're reading this because you're questioning whether you deserve better, take it from someone who tried to glue together a marriage while the other person was still lighting matches. You can't save a relationship built on half-truths.
Healing only works if both people are willing to be honest, even when it's messy.
I don't know exactly what the future holds: lawyers, custody schedules, rebuilding my life, but I do know this: choosing peace over chaos isn't selfish.
It's survival.
And after everything, survival feels like the first real step toward happiness.
The weeks after leaving felt like standing in the middle of a quiet street right after a storm, branches everywhere, puddles reflecting a sky that couldn't decide if it was clear or still raining. I was free of the chaos, but I didn't yet know how to live in the stillness. I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment near the kids' school. It isn't fancy: beige walls, slightly squeaky floors, but it's ours. I bought secondhand furniture, let the kids pick out cheap posters for their rooms, and hung a corkboard in the kitchen where we pin up drawings, appointment cards, and silly notes. At first, they asked daily if Mommy could come over, and every time I had to explain gently that she wouldn't be living with us anymore. Their little faces would fall, and I'd feel the sharp edge of guilt, even though I knew the split wasn't my choice. Co-parenting has been a minefield. Claire swings between over-the-top niceness and simmering resentment.
One week she's promising a fresh start for the kids, the next she's furious about drop-off times or the fact that I won't discuss our personal lives anymore. I keep communication in writing as much as possible: no more midnight arguments on the phone.
Boundaries aren't just a suggestion now, they're survival tools.
Therapy, the real kind, with an actual licensed counselor who isn't hiding in hotel lounges, has helped me unpack everything. The therapist said something that stuck: you weren't just grieving the loss of a marriage. You were grieving the version of yourself who believed he was safe.
That hit like a brick.
I realized I'd been blaming myself for not catching the lie sooner, but the truth is, trust isn't a weakness.
It's what relationships are supposed to rest on. I've started rebuilding small rituals that belong only to me and the kids. Saturday pancakes, even if they come out lopsided. Evening walks where we race to see who spots the first star.
I signed up for a woodworking class, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for because I was too busy saving a marriage that was already sinking. Every now and then, Claire tries to dangle nostalgia like bait: an old photo, a suggestion that we could start over if I just forgive and forget.
But I've learned to dodge those hooks.
I tell her calmly that our relationship ended the moment honesty stopped being part of it. It doesn't always land well, but I can't let her rewrite history just to soothe her conscience. There are nights when loneliness creeps in, and I miss the idea of what we were supposed to be.
But I've come to understand that missing the dream doesn't mean I want the reality back.
The man who stayed through betrayal hoping for change did his best. The man moving forward knows better than to bargain with lies dressed up as redemption.
Life after the implosion has been a study in contrasts.
Some mornings I wake up with an almost startling sense of calm, no wondering if a therapy session is really a meeting at a hotel bar, no waiting for the next half-truth to tumble out.
Other days, grief hits like an undertow.
I'll be making coffee and suddenly remember the sticky notes Claire used to leave after her so-called sessions, or the way she smiled across a cafe table, promising we were getting better. Those memories sting, but they also remind me how far I've come from the person who kept handing out second chances to someone who wasn't even playing on the same field.
The apartment is slowly turning into a home.
I've painted one wall in the living room a warm slate blue. The kids helped, leaving a few tiny fingerprints near the baseboards. We laugh about it now: our secret signature. I bought a battered bookshelf from a thrift shop and filled it with paperbacks and old photo albums, but I keep the albums on a higher shelf.
I'm not ready to sort through those pictures yet.
Healing, I'm learning, isn't a straight line, it's more like a winding trail with rest stops and potholes.
I'm also getting used to the rhythm of single parenting. It's exhausting, yes, but there's something solid about being the one they can count on.
We've started a Friday night tradition: pizza, a silly movie, then all three of us camp out in the living room. They fall asleep in a tangle of blankets, and for a few hours the world feels safe again. Claire still tries to insert herself where she doesn't belong. Sometimes she sends late-night texts about missing us, other times she criticizes how I arrange their weekends.
I've learned not to take the bait.
I reply about logistics only, short and polite. No more long debates about feelings or forgiveness. I don't owe her that space anymore. What surprises me most is how quiet strength sneaks up when you least expect it. I joined a weekend hiking group, partly to get out of the apartment and partly because I needed to meet people who weren't tangled up in my past.
The first hike, I barely spoke, just listened to wind through the pines and the crunch of gravel under boots. By the third outing, I caught myself laughing at a stranger's joke, really laughing, and realized I hadn't done that in months. I still have moments when I wonder if I could have done more, tried harder, been better. But then I remind myself, honesty was never negotiable. I stayed when she asked, I forgave when she swore she'd change, and I believed when she said therapy was helping. None of that stopped her from lying. Now, when I stand at the window at night, city lights flickering beyond the glass, I don't just see what I lost. I see a life that's starting to grow in the open air, no secrets, no gaslighting, just room to breathe. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. Part 9, Looking Forward, approximate 3,000 characters. By the time autumn rolled in, the chaos of separation had settled into something steadier, not perfect, but livable. The mornings were crisp, and I started jogging again, tracing quiet routes through the park before the kids woke up. That half hour of moving through the fog, lungs burning in a good way, became proof that my body, and my life, could keep going no matter how heavy the past felt. Co-parenting found a cautious rhythm. Claire and I speak mainly through a shared calendar app now, pickups, drop-offs, school events, nothing more. She still tries to sprinkle in just checking on you texts, but I've learned to let them sit unread. The boundary is clear, we're parents, not partners. Some days she seems almost relieved by that, other days, she bristles when I don't engage. Either way, I'm done twisting myself into knots to soothe her moods. The kids are adapting too. Our oldest joined a little soccer league, I'm the dad on the sidelines with coffee, shouting encouragement even when the ball heads the wrong way. My youngest insists we read the same bedtime story every night, and I don't mind, there's comfort in rituals that don't break under pressure. Therapy has shifted from triage to rebuilding. I'm working on rediscovering who I am outside the wreckage, a man who likes woodworking, hiking, late-night jazz playlists, and quiet Sunday breakfasts that don't end in arguments. There's still grief, sometimes I see couples in a cafe and feel a pang, but it's softer now, more like a bruise than an open wound. I've also started letting new people into my life, carefully. Not dating yet, but conversations that don't orbit around betrayal feel like oxygen. Friends invite me out for trivia nights, neighbors wave me over for barbecues. The world didn't end with my marriage, it just asked me to start again. What surprises me most is the shift in how I see myself. For years I thought strength meant staying, holding the line no matter how badly the other person treated me. Now I understand that sometimes strength is leaving and then building something better in the empty space you fought so hard to clear. When I tuck the kids in and turn off their lamp, I don't picture the hotel awning anymore. I think about the weekend hike we're planning, or the bookshelf I want to finish sanding. My life isn't waiting for her next apology, it's moving, breathing, filling with small, steady moments that belong entirely to us. I'm not naive, there will be hard days ahead. But I know now that peace isn't a prize someone else hands you. It's a path you choose every morning, even when the trail is muddy and steep. And with every step, the horizon looks a little clearer. Winter came slowly, with pale mornings and long shadows stretching across the living room. By then, the rawness had settled into something sturdier, not exactly happiness, but a sense that the ground under my feet would hold. I'd made it through the sleepless nights, the paperwork, the silent car rides where I had to remind myself to breathe. Now, I could stand in the quiet and not feel swallowed by it. Claire still floats at the edge of my life, a reminder of a story that doesn't belong to me anymore. We talk only about the kids, school forms, dentist appointments, who's bringing cupcakes to the next class party. Sometimes she tries to slip in nostalgia, little lines about the way things used to be, but I don't let her hook me. I answer with politeness and move on. I'm not angry anymore, just uninterested in living inside her version of the past. The kids and I have built new traditions. Sunday mornings, we make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs or stars. On snowy evenings, we drag blankets to the window and watch the flakes swirl around the street lamps. They're learning that love doesn't vanish when people separate, it just changes shape, and it can still make a home feel safe. I've also started to dream again, in small ways. I'm sketching plans to build a bench for the front porch of the apartment. I signed up for a spring half marathon with a coworker who became a friend. I even caught myself flirting lightly with someone at the hardware store, not because I'm ready for romance,
but because it felt good to see myself as more than the man who got betrayed. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that betrayal may break the story you thought you were living, but it doesn't erase the whole book. You get to write new chapters, even if the first lines are shaky. Real healing isn't about rewriting history or waiting for someone to finally become who they promised they were, it's about building a life where honesty and calm aren't negotiable. To anyone reading this who's stuck in the cycle of lies and apologies, wondering if you're asking too much, you're not.
Wanting respect, truth, and safety isn't demanding, it's the bare minimum. Don't settle for a love that makes you shrink. Don't call chaos passion or secrets healing.
I'm closing this chapter with a kind of quiet gratitude for my kids, for the friends who showed up, for the steady heartbeat that kept going even when everything else fell apart. The road ahead isn't perfect, but it's mine, and for the first time in a long time, that feels like hope.